Breakthrough: chilling concussed cells show promise for full recovery. I'm Steve Belair. Welcome to Breakthroughs. In the future, treating a concussion could be as simple as cooling the brain. That's according to research conducted by the University of Wisconsin-Madison engineers, whose findings support the treatment approach at the cellular level. There are currently no effective medical treatment for concussions and other types of traumatic brain injuries, says Christian Frank, the UW-Madison Associate Professor of Mechanical Engineering who led the study. We're very excited about our findings because they could potentially pave the way for treatments we can offer patients. The process is a bit more finicky than just applying an ice pack to the head. Conducting experiments on brain cells in a dish, Frank and his team discovered several key parameters that determine the effectiveness of therapeutic cooling for mitigating damage to the injured cells. We found that for this treatment to be successful, there's a sweet spot, he says. You can't cool too little, you can't cool too much, you can't wait too long following an injury to start treatment. And when the researchers identified the sweet spot, the results were striking. I was amazed at how well the cooling worked, Frank said. We actually went back and repeated the experiments multiple times because I didn't believe it at first. The researchers published their findings in the journal PLOS One. The high occurrence of concussions underscores the pressing need for treatments. Every year in the United States, there are an estimated 1.7 million new cases of traumatic brain injury assessed in emergency rooms, and the incidence of sports-related concussions may approach 3.8 million annually. A traumatic impact to the brain can turn on biochemical pathways that lead to neurodegeneration, the progressive degeneration and loss of function in brain cells. Neurodegeneration causes long-lasting and potentially devastating health issues for patients. These pathways are like flipping on a bad molecular switch in your brain, says Frank. In their experiments, the researchers looked at two of those biochemical pathways. First, they created a network of neurons in a dish and delivered a mechanical stimulus that simulates the kind of injury and cell damage that people experience with a concussion. Then they cooled the injured cells separately to 4 different temperatures. They found that 33 degrees Celsius, 91.4 degrees Fahrenheit, provided the most protective benefit for the cells after 24 and 48 hours post-injury. Notably, cooling to 31 degrees Celsius had a detrimental effect, so there's such a thing as cooling too much, Frank says. Time is also a factor. For the best outcome, the team determined that cooling needed to begin within 4 hours of the injury and continue for at least 6 hours, although Frank says cooling for even 30 minutes still showed some benefits. When they adhered to those parameters, the researchers discovered that they could keep the cells damaging biochemical pathways switched off. In other words, the cells remained healthy and functionally normal, even though they had just suffered a traumatic injury. After 6 hours of cooling, the researchers brought the concussed brain cells back up to normal body temperature, curious about whether warming would cause the damaging biochemical pathways to turn on. The biggest surprise was that the molecular switches actually stayed off permanently through the duration of the lab experiment, Frank says. That was huge. He and his students compared the results with previous animal studies and randomized human trials that investigated cooling as a treatment for traumatic brain injuries. We found really good agreement between the studies when we dialed in those specific parameters. So that's a very encouraging sign, Frank says. But this isn't the end of the story. We think this warrants further investigation in animal studies. Man, that's cool. Right on. I'll leave a link in the description to the full article. And as usual, please like, share, subscribe, and take care.